Okay, so look, I know you're probably asking yourself, why is Kremen showing us these really old beat-up comic books? Actually, I should mention, they're not all just comics. These have records in them, if you know what a record is. I'm sure some of you have records yourselves or listen to them. So these old comics actually had records in them that you could read along with. You know, you could put it on your record player and then read along with the story. So when I was a kid, I loved these. These were my favorites. Captain America and the Falcon was probably my favorite of them all. The stuff on the werewolf. This Star Trek one didn't have a record in it, so it probably wasn't my favorite. It's so long ago, I don't really remember. We're talking about the mid to late 1970s here. But I wanted to mention these because, and this will be a short video, it's not related to the Mike Rose piece at all. So this is not the Mike Rose piece that I was promising that I'll put up tomorrow. But I've had a lot of you emailing me over the last couple of days. A couple of you had mentioned this to me on the check-ins that I did on Monday. And, you know, a lot of you have expressed openly your anxiety over the course, or you've said, well, I used to enjoy writing, but I found over the years that I don't enjoy it as much. It's not my favorite subject. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things and maybe give you more of my background. That'll maybe help ease some of that anxiety, particularly as we get closer to working on the first paper over the next week and a half or so. When I was a kid, it took me a long time to learn how to read and write well. By first grade, I still wasn't reading particularly well. I was actually put in what was called the lower reading group, which they never should have called it that, but again, it was the late 70s, early 80s, so that's how they labeled things. And we were the kids that, because we were behind everybody else in the class, they used to send us down to the basement of our school. I went to a Catholic grammar school back in Watertown, Connecticut, and we always felt a little bit singled out, because we would have to stand up from our desks. They'd march us down to the basement. And in the basement, there was another smaller classroom where Sister Peter, Sister Mary Louise, Sister Peter was a different teacher at the school. Sister Mary Louise would teach us how to read, and she was a fabulous teacher. And one of the reasons she was so fabulous is how supportive she was and how encouraging she was. And I've never forgotten that, because to this day, and as I've mentioned, I've published one book. I've got another book coming out in the spring. I write a lot. I enjoy it, but I'm not a fast writer. I'm not a particularly fancy writer either. I actually write in a very simple, very straightforward style, because that is how I was taught, particularly in Catholic school, to keep things simple and as direct as possible. So I tend to have a more streamlined style. But I'm mentioning all this because I don't want you to worry. I want you to do the best you can as you start thinking about the papers you're going to write for this class. Everybody has the innate skill and talent to write. So don't think that you're not a writer or that you can't do the class well. As I said, I'm a poster child, I guess you could say, for someone that really struggled a lot when I was a kid. But over the years, I fell in love with reading. I fell in love with writing. I credit these comics, actually, for some of that, because these were the things that made me want to read more. And luckily, my teachers, when I was a kid in grammar school, and my parents and my grandmother and everybody that was around me encouraged me. And they said, well, he's reading, let him read more of this stuff. So these were my entry point. When I was a kid and all the other kids in my class were way ahead of me, it was the comics that really helped me become interested in reading and writing. And it's taken me to the place where I'm at now, where I'm teaching reading and writing, which is something I also enjoy doing, because I know how difficult the process is, and I know how challenging it can be, and I know how much it can produce that sense of anxiety. So to the best of your ability, I know it's easier said than done. Don't worry. Again, we're working on all these essays and assignments together. I'm always happy to help. And again, I wanted to mention the fact that as someone who really did struggle with these skills, particularly when I was younger, and as someone who still writes fairly slowly, I read slowly. I guess it's also age kicking in at this point. But I just want to encourage you, don't look down on yourself. Really be encouraged. You're going to do well in the class. All I ask you to do is the best that you can, especially under these circumstances. I know we're all living in a time that is really unprecedented. My great-grandmother lived through the 1918 pandemic, and so we have family stories about how she survived that. She was really sick, but this is a once in a century sort of a thing, so you got to give yourself a break too, and that's something you got to remember when you're doing your reading for the class or for other classes, the papers. Give yourself some time to yourself, and again, just be confident. I guess that's what I'm trying to tell you. And one other thing I want to mention before I sign off on this little hopefully somewhat inspirational video is, for those of you that were wondering, and I've already said this to a few of you, the Falcon is my favorite superhero. I love him in the movies, I loved him in the comics, and I trace it back to this. I love Captain America as well, but this was the one as a kid that I loved the most, and so he's always been one of my favorite heroes. In fact, I wish they'd give him this old disco 1970s costume in the movies, because I still think it looks kind of cool. But anyway, just wanted to mention that, a little bit of background and a little bit of encouragement, I hope, especially as you're getting into this first week of the semester. I'll be back tomorrow with some more points and some other notes on the Mike Rose piece, so I will talk to you then. See you later.